You're listening to Turn the Page, the Indie Book Podcast, your go-to destination for celebrating indie books and the creative authors behind them. I'm your host, Kay, and in each episode I'll be shining a spotlight on phenomenal indie books, chatting with talented indie authors, and offering you a peek behind the self-publishing curtain. Don't miss out, hit that subscribe button now to ensure you never miss an episode, and get ready to meet your next favourite indie book as we turn the page together. Welcome to episode 18 of Turn the Page, the Indie Book Podcast. Today I'm joined by the wonderful R.K. Ashwick. R.K. Ashwick is the author of two cozy fantasy series, the Lutesong Series and the Side Quest Row series. Her books feature rival potioneers and a bard with a possessed lute trying to uncover a deadly magical threat. Before I hand over to R.K. Ashwick to introduce herself and tell us a bit more about her books, just a quick reminder to hit that like and subscribe button, whatever platform you're listening on, just to help this episode reach as many people as possible. And as always, any links mentioned will be included in the show notes so that you can go find the author's books after the show. Hi RK, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Just to get us started, can you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a bit about the books that you write?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am R.K. Ashwick. I'm a cozy fantasy romance author. I write both low and high stakes cozy fantasy with different levels of romance. So the Lutesong series, for example, is higher stakes with romance as a subplot, and the Side Quest Row series is lower stakes with a heavier focus on romance.
Okay, brilliant. So what drew you then to the cozy fantasy genre in the first place, and what does cozy fantasy mean to you? I think it means something different to everyone, so I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, that was going to be honestly part of my answer, is that it's different for everyone. I started out writing just fantasy and then discovered the term cozy fantasy and just leaned into it. I like both high stakes and low stakes stories. So for me, I don't necessarily need my cozy fantasy to be low stakes. But for me, there does need to be a certain comforting vibe, a soft place to land for the characters, no matter what happens to them. I think setting plays a really big part in kind of what attracts me to different cozy fantasy stories. But beyond that, it's so hugely varied because cozy vibes are so subjective. Like I've had people go, oh, Ambrose has a tragic backstory, therefore Rival Most Vile isn't cozy. But for me, it absolutely is. Yeah, it's just so subjective.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I know what you mean, because for me it's just, I don't know, it's that feeling that you get when you just feel happy to be in that world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange one. When you were talking about low stakes compared to high stakes, I remember thinking in Arrival Most Vile, and particularly in A Captured Cauldron, there's a real element of danger, I felt. So how do you balance then those cozy themes with the conflict and the higher stakes that are found in the books?
For me, I guess when I'm writing, if there's no element of any kind of danger, I get bored. I'm like, I need somebody to be a little bit stressed in this book. But for me, it always like, it's sort of like the hurt comfort trope, right? If you're going to hurt a character, you'll want to comfort them in the end. And I think for cozy fantasy, there's a much higher ratio of comfort to hurt. So, yes, they could briefly be in danger. But if there are other characters comforting them and healing them, and if there's, again, that soft place to land at the end that's really emphasized, to me, that's still cozy. Because I think if you take away any element of stress or danger, the story gets boring. You need to have a little bit of conflict and stress in order for them to then sink into their cozy little place at the end.
Yeah. Do you have like a gateway author or book that got you into the cozy fantasy genre?
I grew up reading a lot of Tamara Pierce and Shannon Hale, which aren't necessarily cozy, but I feel like Diana Wynne Jones and Howl's Moving Castle, and just the vibe of like the Dealing with Dragons series, if anybody remembers that. I think that I leaned into that. And there's a whole online debate on if Sir Terry Pratchett is cozy or not.
Oh, I've not
And
heard
so like
that, but I can
maybe
see it now. Yeah.
there's like elements. I mean, I feel like every book could be different. And I feel like his humor kind of lightens the stakes, like it feels different. But I guess those are my like early gateways. Then my contemporary gateway was definitely Legends and Lattes. I remember basically not live blogging on Tumblr, but just putting out random thoughts, being like, oh my God, they just discovered cinnamon rolls on my Tumblr. It was just so cute and so different. So I think that was like my contemporary gateway drug book.
Yeah,
book.
Legends and Lattes is mine as well. It was so good. I remember reading it and being like, wow, I've not read anything like this before. And now I love that cozy fantasy is everywhere. So, would you say those books that you just talked about were very big influences on your writing style, or do you have any others as well?
Yeah, I would say those were the big influences on my writing style. Though, if I am writing something and reading something concurrently, whatever I'm reading will kind of leak into what I'm writing. So I try to not be reading at the same time as when I'm writing, but I'm also writing all the time and I do have to read. So it's a weird cycle.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I remember the first time I started writing fantasy, I was reading Pride and Prejudice, and for some reason, everyone was talking in such the wrong way
Yes.
when I
Yep.
was writing it. So, yeah, I could
Hmm.
definitely relate. So, both the Lutesong series and the Side Quest Row series are trilogies. How do you approach plotting out a full trilogy, but then keeping each book satisfying on its own?
Yeah, I didn't really plan out the trilogies, particularly for the Lutesong series. I started writing it going, yeah, it'll be a trilogy because that's what fantasy writers do, right? I wouldn't recommend that to anybody because then it just makes it harder to properly foreshadow things and kind of plan out, okay, here's the character arc for this book, but what is the character arc across the whole series? So I did it towards the end of book one. I started actually thinking about, oh, okay, what are book two and book three actually going to be? But I would recommend maybe planning it a little bit earlier than that. In terms of keeping each book satisfying, I try to keep each story pretty much like self contained so there isn't too much of a cliffhanger at the end while still keeping the setting open for the next adventure. It's also easier for me to keep it contained so I don't have to track a ton of details in between the books because at this point I've been writing on each series for at least 5 years. And so you just start forgetting things. Unless you're making yourself your own Wikipedia as you go, things are going to drop through the cracks.
Yeah. And congratulations, by the way, because the final book in the Lute Song series is now available. Came out this week, I believe. Without giving away too many spoilers, can you go into depth a little more on what readers can expect from this series in particular? And just as an extra question, were there any particular challenges in wrapping up this series that you've been working on for 5 years?
Yes. Okay. So the Lutesong series, just as a very brief summary, it starts with The Stray Spirit, which is a higher stakes cozy fantasy set in a Regency esque world, loosely Regency. It focuses on a bard named Emery who gets a forest spirit named Aspen trapped in his lute. Having a talking lute is not their idea of a good time for either of them. So they go to Emery's ex girlfriend, Cal, for help, and together they discover that the event that forced Aspen into the lute is a sign of a much greater disaster to come. And then through the series, we follow the trios, that's Emery, Cal, and Aspen, as they gradually climb further into high society, as they make more spirit friends, as the world kind of changes slowly around them due to the events of book one. And then The Spirit's Curse, so that's the last book in the trilogy, and that just came out May 26th. It really focuses on Aspen and the spirits and what their future looks like. One of the biggest challenges of writing the last book, honestly, it was the middle of the book because I knew the beginning and I knew the end. And I was like, oh, this is my fifth book. Of course, the middle will just magically come to me. That was so incorrect of me. I was so wrong. So it took just a lot of passes and a lot of reiteration to figure out a middle section that really worked and emotionally resonated with everything else. So I'm happy, of course, with where it landed, but it was difficult getting there. Also, I'm so sorry if you can hear my cat. She's being really chatty today.
I can hear her. I actually thought it was a child.
No, I'm so sorry. It's my
Oh
cat.
no, don't be silly. Please do not apologise. I have two cats, a puppy and a turtle and a child. My house is never quiet.
That's awesome. She
Um,
just hopped up next to me. So she says hello to everyone.
oh,
Her name is Leia, like Princess Leia.
she's lovely. I saw a picture of her and she looks very similar to my cat. I love the black and white cats. They're
Oh,
so great. So I haven't read the Luke Song series yet. I did download books one and two yesterday. I came into your universe with the Side Quest Row series when I discovered Arrival Most Vile last year and honestly fell in love. That has very different vibes though, doesn't it, to the Luke Song series? So again, can you tell us what readers can expect to find in that series?
yes. So for the Side Quest Row series, if you're looking for something more traditionally cozy, traditionally lower stakes, like Legends and Lattes or Cursed Cocktails, That's definitely the side quest row series. So, as you mentioned, it starts with A Rival Most Vile, which is about two rival potion shop owners, Ambrose and Eli, who have to work together on a lucrative commission for the mayor. It is a dual POV, queer, cozy fantasy romance with a huge found family in the form of all of the other merchants on the street. They take care of each other and they look out for each other. And they also play a huge role in book two when Ambrose is, this is not really a spoiler because it's on the back of the book. Ambrose is kidnapped to brew an illegal potion, and the merchants form a little rescue team to go get him, which is cozier than it sounds, I promise. I realize the stakes are a little higher, but it's treated with a light tone. And then they also play a huge role in book three, which I'm currently writing, when Ambrose needs a very rare mushroom for a potion, and they have to form an adventuring party to help him go get it. So that concept is, what if you took all of the shopkeeper NPCs and threw them into their own adventuring party? How poorly does that go?
I love it because as I'm reading it, I'm a huge D&D fan, and as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, it just sounds like a crazy game, and it's amazing. Can I just ask where the idea came from for both series, actually? But we'll start with Arrival Most Vile.
Yeah. So for Rival Most Vile, I was going to bed. This was like 5 years ago at this point. I was going to bed one night and I thought just of the phrase rival potion shops. And I was like, oh, that's cute. I'll do something with that later. And I didn't go back to it really for a couple months until I started figuring out, okay, if it's rival potion shops, obviously the potion shops are right across the street from each other. What are the personalities of the two shopkeepers? Because that's really like the crux of the whole thing. And how would that manifest in their appearance, in what potions they sell, in how they run their shop, in how they treat each other? And then that's where Ambrose and Eli formed out of that. Then I was just off to the races after that point. Then for the Lutesong series, it was a little more intentional. It was, I want to say, I think it was the 2019 NaNoWriMo. And if you're not familiar with NaNoWriMo, it was a national novel writing event where you would just be like, I'm going to write 50,000 words in
Yeah.
November. And I really wanted to do it back in 2019, but I wasn't sure of what to write. And so they used to have resources for kids on their website where it's, oh, brainstorm an idea and write down just some things that you're really interested in right now. So I wrote bards, caves, and possession dynamics from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because I had just watched Full Metal Alchemist and I loved the greed and Ling dynamic. So then the prompts just said, okay, take some of those items and connect them together. What can you write about? So I was like, okay, a bard, forest spirit, there's caves, the bard gets possessed. So yeah, that's where it grew from. It was a little less spontaneous than Rival Most Vile.
Yeah. NaNoWriMo was so great, but I know everything's gone pear-shaped and they're no
Oh,
longer
yeah.
running. But I understand that it helped a lot of people. I think I wrote my first iteration of a draft for, I think it was like the 2016 year. So yeah, it was good once. So just going back to, you mentioned a few of the tropes from Side Quest Row series. What are the tropes in the Lutesong series that people can expect?
For that one, so there's access to lovers in the first book. There is a social season in the second book, which I had a lot of fun writing. There's a reverse found family where Aspen attaches to Emery and goes, oh, I am a Carrick now. I am adopting myself into your family. And the Carricks go, okay. There's, I don't, it's a little less trope heavy,
Yeah.
like literally staring at the book cover, trying to think of other like tropes that I find. Yeah, I guess those are the main ones.
Okay, brilliant. One thing, obviously, I noticed with A Captured Cauldron is that it has an extra POV, so you've got three point of view characters. How do you approach doing multiple character point of views? And by the way, just to say, it's one of the books where I feel like it was done really well. So many times I've read multi-POV books where I'm like, no, I just want the main characters back. And you feel like the other characters aren't as important. But with yours, I was like so invested. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that each character has their own sort of distinct voice and their own moment?
Yeah, it's a lot of. I know I said I didn't plan the trilogy, but I do plan a lot for each individual book. So I actually have a spreadsheet where I write down, okay, here are the events that need to happen. Here are the POVs. So for Capture Cauldron, for example, we've got Ambrose, Eli, and the addition of Dawn. So I map that out and I take a look at it before I start writing. I go, okay, I've got 5 chapters that are just Ambrose and Dawn. I haven't checked in on Eli recently. What does that mean in terms of his personal goals? How have I checked or not checked in on him? How can I add that? Does this scene make sense for it to be from Ambrose's POV or Eli's POV? Who is feeling stronger about the events that are happening, and who does it make sense to get that interiority? So it's a similar process for Lutesong too, where in book 1 we started with Emery as the sole POV. Book 2 is Emery and Cal, and then book 3 is Emery and Aspen, which is very fun, adding a forest spirits POV. So I do also try to keep in mind, like, what is this character's unique background and how would that influence how they react to things, how they observe things, how they describe things. In Lutesong in particular, Aspen has picked up a lot of human mannerisms that they don't fully understand. So they will do something and another spirit, because there's a lot of spirits around them now, will go, "Why'd you do that?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Emery always does it." And just like they're picking up things but lacking like context. And so that was always just like a fun thing to add to really show their perspective on things.
Yeah. You're making me want to read that series even more now. With Side Quest Row, the final installment is coming, is it October this year?
Yes, that is what I'm currently planning on, is Draft for a Dragon, which is the last book in the trilogy, will come out in October.
Brilliant. And what stage are you at with that now, and how are you feeling about bringing that series to a close? 2 complete series in 1 year is quite an achievement.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't know if I'll continue to do 2 books a year, just because you're pretty much constantly writing without a break. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's definitely impacting me, because I just finished Spirit's Curse and I'm like, oh my God, I'm currently really deep into writing this one draft of Draft for a Dragon to go to alpha readers at the end of the month. So, yeah, basically from the frying pan into the fire, which makes it harder, but it's also making me step back and be like, oh, this chapter, I don't want to write it. Why don't I want to write it? Does it not include all of the things that I really liked about this premise? How can I beef up that more? So I keep taking a step back rather than just trying to force myself to continue with the chapters. But my deadline is rapidly approaching. I am deep into it for another couple weeks, and then it'll go to my alpha readers for several weeks, and then I will be so dumb switching over to wrapping up this anthology story that I'm also working on.
Oh, wow. I was going to say, oh, you can take a break afterwards, but I guess
Yeah,
not.
I wish I
Okay, so just for fun question, across each series, is there a particular character in each series who you most relate to and why?
could. There's bits of me in all of them, but I think the ones that I attach to the most are Emery and Ambrose, because Emery is an anxious little guy and Ambrose, he's just such an introvert that I'm like, yeah, you're me, buddy, in many different ways. I feel like secondarily, Dawn and Cal have a certain work ethic that I vibe with, for better and for worse. Then Eli's very specific journey in book 1 really mirrored what I was going through at the time in book 1. Don't read
Okay.
too much into it. But yeah, it's just so funny how there's like little bits of the author in all of the characters, even if on so many levels they're so different.
Yeah, after what you just said about your workload, I can definitely see the comparison with Dawn because she never stops. And
Yeah.
neither do you.
I swear I do have a break planned. It's just a little later.
Your cat needs to sit across your keyboard and just
Yeah,
help
she
you
really
out.
does. Honestly, she's so good at it.
So, again, just a fun question. If you could take a side quest of your own with any of your characters, who would you choose and what do you think the quest would be?
So I was thinking about this, and is it weird that most of it was shopping trips? Do shopping
Okay.
trips count as side quests?
I would love to go on a shopping trip with the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, I would definitely make flower crowns with Aspen, because Aspen would be able to actually teach me how to make a flower crown. I would want to go shopping for potion ingredients with Ambrose. I would want to go to a bookstore with Cal and Dawn. I would want to go pet dragons with Eli. And then I just want to go shopping on Rosamond Street.
Yeah.
I would be so intimidated by most of the shop owners just because they're so smart and nice. And I would be like, oh no, I have a crush on half of them. Um, But yeah, being able to just look at all the pretty wands that Dawn makes and look at all of the nice potions on Ambrose, like that just sounds so nice.
Yeah, and the cupcakes as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, the bakery in book two. Oh man, I would be standing at the counter for 20 minutes trying to decide what to get, and Viola would be like, please, just make a decision, please.
Wonderful. So let's go back to your writing process a minute. We've already talked a little bit about how you approach the series. So does that mean you take on that plotter role, or are you more of a pantser or something in between? And how has your process evolved from the very first book you wrote to now, 6 books later?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely a plotter, as evidenced by the spreadsheet. In terms of how it's evolved, I feel like I'm embracing draft zeros more and
Okay.
treatments more, and basically just trying to write in layers rather than trying to like, okay, I've got my spreadsheet. I'm going to open up a blank Word doc and then just write a full, complete, great chapter immediately because then I just get stuck and I move so slowly. So I've embraced writing, okay, let me first put down what the chapter is in paragraph form and just make sure I'm thinking about the individual beats, how they transition from one to another. Maybe I'll think up some dialogue as I go, but that's not necessary. Then after that, I'll be like, okay, there is something on the page. I know roughly where I need to go. Let me write a draft zero, which is okay, I'll write an actual sentence, but it'll be a bullet point. So it doesn't
Yeah.
feel legitimate. And I don't worry about formatting. If I write a crappy sentence, I just move on. That's okay. Then I'll be able to get the shape of the chapter and the shape of the story from there. And then if I run into issues, I haven't labored for 6 months over perfect prose. I can step back and go, okay, this isn't working. How do I re-outline? How do I adjust my spreadsheet? And then I can go back in and either do a new draft zero if I have to, which is what I'm doing with certain chapters in Draft for a Dragon right now. Then I'll be like, okay, in 2 weeks' time, I will at least have everything bullet pointed on the page. And then I'm going to take the last 3 weeks to go back in and actually turn it into a functioning chapter that will give my alpha readers, like, here is the sketch of the story. Like, this is the shape of the story. Sure, there might be some clunky sentences. I'm probably missing some character description or setting description, but I'm really looking for feedback on, is the shape of the story working? Do you get a sense of the character arcs? And then basically using their notes, I'll refine that further from there and then send it to my line editor.
I'm honestly feeling so inspired right now because I am a pantser by nature, but it's not going well. It never goes well. Everything always goes completely wrong. And I've just listened to you say that and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, that's genius.
It's all just in the pursuit of breaking it down into smaller, more manageable chunks and making it less intimidating. Because
Yeah,
I feel
definitely.
like if I'm intimidated by what I have to do, I avoid it as much as possible. And that doesn't
Yeah.
really help when you're on a deadline. And then it just becomes a stress cycle where you're like, oh no, now I only have 5 days. But I kept procrastinating because I'm intimidated. Yeah, any way that you can give yourself as much of a roadmap as you need, because I know for some pantsers, having too much of a plot makes them feel too locked in. So some people, they're like plantsers,
Yeah.
where they're like in the middle, where they give themselves some sort of roadmap while also giving themselves enough leeway. And then, yeah, I would always recommend just breaking it down into individual chunks. Alexandra Rowland was just posting about this on Tumblr about if you're feeling afraid of it, if you're feeling frustrated, don't turn away from it. Be curious about the frustration and think about, okay, why am I frustrated? Why don't I want to write this? Have I strayed away from my original idea? Am I not interested in it? Did I mess up something 2 pages ago that really changed the flow of the chapter? Yeah, it's that whole concept of really just leaning into it and figuring out what's going wrong rather than just running away from it.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I'm in a coaching session right now. I feel like I should be paying you for this because it all applies so much to the situation that I'm in with my current draft. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I hope it helps.
It already is. I'm feeling my brain starting to click in the background.
Oh, good, good.
It's been pretty still for a while, so it's definitely moving. So thank you for that. So obviously you're an indie author and there's more to being an indie author than just the writing part, which obviously is a huge part, but then there's also all of the bits that come with indie publishing. So, what do you feel has been the best and worst parts of indie publishing for you personally?
I'll start with the worst, which I feel like a lot of other authors will echo, and it's definitely the marketing
Yeah,
aspect. It is such a different skill from writing, from drawing, from managing writing milestones. And it's a huge shame that writers, even traditionally published writers, have to be public facing and have to do the marketing themselves.
yeah,
It's exhausting. You have to keep track of social media algorithms. The algorithms want you to be on every single day. It takes time away from writing and drawing and honestly just life in general. It forces you to be on social media even if you don't want to be there in the first place. There is no reclusive author anymore, except for, I guess, Stephen King, who does not need to be on social media. Any new author, they do. And that could even impact how you get a traditional deal. Well, they're like, are you viral yet? Which really just kind of stinks because
yes,
it's not necessarily a reflection on the writing quality. But I would say that the best part has been definitely getting feedback from readers. So getting notes from them or getting even like fan art. For Rival Most Vile, somebody was like, oh, I was listening to the audiobook and I threw these potion bottles. Literally, she was like making these clay potion bottles and sent them to me. And so
that's
now I
amazing.
have 5 potion bottles sitting on my shelf. It was wild. It was like one of the craziest days. So that has been just absolutely incredible. And I
Mm,
would say that another aspect is because I'm self published, I get to have a say in the cover design. I get to have a say in the interior art, in the chapter icons. And for a lot of that, I have worked with other artists to do that. So, for example, the Lutesong series, I worked with 3 separate artists to do different styles of art for book 1, book 2, and book 3. So there are interior illustrations in all of those. And that's been very cool to be able to like harness their style and get it
yeah.
into the book and work with other. It's just, I don't know. It was been very fun.
That's great. I think you've said there what I think the general consensus is about indie publishing, that the best things are the freedom and the reader connection, but the worst thing is the marketing, especially if you're introverted, which so many authors are. It's so difficult to just put yourself out there. And like you said, constantly put yourself out there, not just one
Mhm.
time. You've got to keep doing it. But yes, hopefully things like the podcast and other avenues will help.
Yes, absolutely.
And one thing you said there about the artwork really just reminded me of something that I wanted to mention to you, which was the, I'm not going to give anything away, but the secret code in a cauldron,
Oh
a captive
yeah.
cauldron, because I got to the end and I read the note that said, "Did you see the code?" And I went, "No." And then spent the next 2 hours sat outside in the garden going back through trying to figure out what I'd missed and then eventually figuring it out and felt so stupid because it took me ages. But when I eventually did, I thought that was the most brilliant thing that I've seen an author do to keep a reader engaged, and just well done, because that was great and it was so much fun to do. But how did you decide to do that? Was that just a spur of the moment thing, or did you have that in your mind before you were writing, or did that come along with the story idea?
Yeah. Hey, I'm so glad that you picked up on it because I was afraid people were going to be like, I don't know, and just ignore it. But I think as soon as I determined that there was a character writing something in code, and I knew that I was going to represent some of their work in the, and this is more of a pointer for people. As soon as I determined I was going to reflect some of their work in the interior illustrations, which I do myself for the Side Quest Row series, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to take advantage of it. I have to put in a functioning code or puzzle into it using the context clues from how Ambrose is decoding something. I won't say more than that. But yeah, I think as soon as I came up with that, I was like, oh, I got to do it. I got it.
I'm so glad you did. It was so much fun. Um,
Yay.
okay, so for our listeners who are always looking to discover new indie authors and new indie books, can you recommend 3 indie books that you think our listeners should pick up?
Yes, I've got a lot of recs. I narrowed it down to cozy fantasy romance
Brilliant.
specifically. First is Kitten Basie by Tess Carletta. That is an Achillean romance about an immortal in a small town. For another, actually, I think all 3 of these are Achillean. Another one is Phantom and Rook by Noah Hawthorne. That is about an immortal and a witch finding each other again. And then for a more contemporary cozy fantasy involving a baby griffin, there is Call Forth the Moonlight by Z.M. Celestere.
Wonderful. I have read Kitten Basie, and admittedly,
Oh,
I am a
great.
fangirl for that book. So,
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. But I will definitely pick up the other two. That's great. Thank you. So, what are you working on now that the two trilogies are coming to a close? You mentioned an anthology. Are you working on anything else as well?
Yeah. So I am part of the Right Here, Right Queer podcast
Yep.
Discord group, and we are working on an anthology, hopefully coming out in September. We haven't officially announced it yet, but I am trying to wrap up edits on that story. I would say short story, and I guess it's short, but it's 20,000 words right now. So whoopsies. And then after that, so like after the two trilogies wrap, I actually have an agent now. And so there are two projects that I'm going to start working on to pursue traditional publishing with that agent. But I do want to remain a hybrid author.
Yeah.
And so I might try to enter some additional anthologies. Like I know Indie Bites always has these really great themes. And I always look at other anthologies and I'm like, oh, that's so cool, but I don't have time. So I don't know, maybe I will say I'll have time. I don't know if we'll see. But yeah, because A, I have to write these new books, and B, the traditional process is so much slower. I don't really have like a definitive, yes, this will be out at this time, this will be out at that time, which is a little weird for me.
Yeah.
Because previously I've been working with such strict deadlines for myself to make sure that I'm actually getting these books out. So yeah, it's a little nebulous.
How does it feel to have to loosen your own sort of reins a little bit over your work with the traditional side of things?
I am hoping that at the very least I can use it to write a little slower because I have been putting out two books a year is I guess I like the pace in terms of, oh, maybe people won't forget who I am. But it's difficult and I don't know if I can keep doing that. And I feel like if these were to get picked up for traditional, I would not be putting out two books a year. That's not really how that works.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm hoping that maybe I can balance myself a little bit better because I do also I do have other hobbies that I really like. I enjoy drawing and so I do the illustrations for SideQuest Row and then I'm working on a video game which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later. Just like think trying to achieve a balance would be nice. And I have a full-time job. That's
My gosh. You've got irons in
yeah.
every single fire.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess there is always a risk in terms of giving up some of the control for
Yeah.
traditional publishing, but hopefully I can achieve a better balance maybe. And if these books don't get picked up, I can still pursue self-publishing for them to make sure they still see the light of day. And I'm just hoping that the precedent that I've set in terms of how I style my self-published books,
Yeah.
my hope is that if people pick up the next books for traditional, I can be like, hey, this is my like brand, this is my style. I would like to continue doing this. So I'm not really straying far from my original vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And just to go back to the anthology, I love that you guys from the Right Here, Right Queer podcast are doing that because I love your podcast. So I'm really excited to read the anthology. I didn't know that was coming, so that's really
Oh,
exciting.
yay. Yeah, we've been pretty quiet about it because we're all still in various stages of writing the stories, but I think we'll be talking about it pretty soon.
Wonderful. Just jumping back then, you mentioned that you're a big video game fan and that you're working on a video game. I did read that in your, I don't know if it was another interview with you, that you would love for your books to extend into video game territory someday. I have this dream as well. So yeah, what does that look like? Please give me some details.
Yeah, so yes, you're absolutely right in that in every opportunity I've had, I have talked about how much I love cozy gaming, like Stardew Valley, like Harvest Moon, even like Sticky Business. I don't know if you've ever played that, but
Oh, I
yeah,
haven't.
I love those games. Fields of Mystria is my current obsession. Anyway, so I decided I just had felt that bug for a while. It's like, oh, I really just like I want to make a video game that somehow links back to a Rival Most File. And so I am currently working on a potion shop decorating game
Gosh, I'm
that
so happy.
I'm planning on having it hosted on my website. So it's very simple. I really can't emphasize enough how simple it is because I only have taken one semester of computer science, and that was like years ago. So I basically don't know how to code, and I just started this in January. So really, I want people to lower their expectations. There's no limits, there's no objectives. It's literally just like a dress up game, but for a potion shop. And
I love
so
that you're telling people to lower their expectations, but just in our conversation so far, not only do you write books, you also draw, and now you are designing your own game. Not that you've got someone else to do it, you are doing it yourself.
it's fun. It's fun and it's frustrating because I am a beginner. And so I keep messing up stuff and not knowing how to debug and having to refactor everything when I'm like, oh, I built that totally wrong. So it doesn't scale. Wonderful. But I am slowly making progress. I've done a few functionality playtests. And so now I'm trying to add more assets to the game. And I'll just keep doing playtests to make sure that I didn't totally break the game. I don't have a release date set for it. It would be really cool if I could line it up with the release of Draft for a Dragon in October.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to set that expectation.
Yeah.
Because I am totally new to this. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Whenever it is released, I will be there.
Okay, great.
Okay, fantastic. Just as a final question, where can our listeners find out more about you and your books and stay updated on everything that you have coming up?
Yes. So, yeah, speaking of marketing, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Ashwick Books. I am far more active on Instagram because, frankly, I'm not very good at making all those videos. I also have a newsletter. You can sign up for that on my website at rkashwick.com. Newsletter folks will get all the kind of ARC and pre-order and release announcements first. Then I usually send one every month. Sometimes they'll have artwork, sometimes they'll have recipes. I try to make it fun and not constantly like shilling stuff to the newsletter folks. And so, yeah, those are all the different ways that you can keep track of what I'm up to.
Wonderful. And I'll put all of the links in the show notes when the podcast comes out, so everybody will be able to find those really easily. This was such a great conversation. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see what you've got coming up next. I'm so excited to finish the Side Quest Rose series and to dive into your Lutesong series. Yes, lots for me to read there and lots for you to carry on with. You're going to be very busy.
Yeah, I am busy. Oh boy. But no, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the weekend. Bye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of Turn the Page, the Indie Book Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating and reviewing the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you're listening. It really helps others discover the show and our indie author guests. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee, well, actually a tea, over at coffee.com/turnthepage. The link, along with all the others mentioned in this episode, is in the show notes. I'll be back on June 27th with more indie book updates. Until then, happy reading and keep turning the page.